Sheriff Gleason? My secretary said it was urgent. Oh my God! That's awful! His whole body? And you kept eating Twinkies. Well, what do you think we should do about it?
You ready on shore? Yeah, we're all right. We're ready.
No, you know what? That sounds too expensive and not even that entertaining. Look, the lake is uninhabited, right? Yeah, but last time I was up that way, I saw her feeding the damn alligator. Crocodile, whatever. So here's what I'm thinking. We close off the lake. Nobody gets eaten if nobody goes near it, right? We take a couple grand out of the snow removal fund, put up a big chain link fence around the whole thing. Problem solved. And you know, this way we won't need to bring in Fish and Game, and there won't be a bunch of pointless sequels. Everybody wins. Excellent. Thank you, Sheriff. Good luck. This is Movie Night. Hello and welcome back to Movie Night. I'm your host, Jonathan Paula. Apologies for the unplanned hiatus these past couple months, but some personal stuff combined with YouTube's adpocalypse really demoralized my desire to spend dozens of hours talking about a bunch of old alligator films that only 1% of my subscribers will end up actually watching. But these dumb movies aren't going to review themselves, so let's continue with Movie Night's monster movie series with a look at the Lake Placid franchise. We begin with the original. Of the many disaster movies and creature features released in the 1990s, this monster-focused bore might just be the worst. The Steve Miner horror film doubled its $27 million budget after its release in the summer of 1999, though. When a massive crocodile begins terrorizing residents of a secluded lake, three unqualified idiots bicker with each other while attempting to stop it. Bill Pullman, Bridget Fonda, Oliver Platt, Brendan Gleeson, and Betty White are all featured rather prominently in this embarrassing waste of their respective talents. Given the less than subtle scriptwriting, I want to give this group the benefit of the doubt, but these really are some of their cringiest performances yet, and at the end of the day, having some low-level Fish and Game officer as your hero just isn't sexy. Admittedly, the R-rated production has a really provocative poster, and a halfway decent Jaws-inspired cold open. But that's about it. The rest of the production is never outright awful, but it's never suspenseful or scary. And without any hint of self-awareness, the entire narrative slogs from one boneheaded character decision to the next. Like, for starters, stop going near the lake! This isn't Cape Cod in the middle of July, it's a small lake that has no public access and only one permanent resident. In fact, not a single private citizen is ever in danger in this film. The only people harmed are those involved in the research and containment teams. If your conflict can be resolved by staying at home, your film might have a shitty script. Who wrote this crap anyway? David E. Kelly, the creator of Ally McBeal, Boston Public, and The Practice, and winner of 10 Primetime Emmy Awards. Jesus, what happened to Lake Placid? Was he high? Did he lose a bet or something? It is staggering how such a great writer wrote such a dumb movie. For example, just 3 minutes into the film, Gleason grabs a Twinkie and whispers this inane line to an empty boat.
Everyone's a comedian sarcastic.
What does that even mean? It's a truly bizarre phrase with an equally weird line reading. Filmed on location in northern Maine and British Columbia, the beautiful scenery and wilderness cinematography is one of Lake Placid's few redeeming qualities. Another, of course, is White's, at the time, uncharacteristically brash and vulgar persona. There's just something undeniably entertaining about watching a wholesome geriatric berate Gleason by quipping, "If I had a dick, this is where I tell you to suck it." Both practical animatronic models and halfway decent CGI bring the giant crocs to life with mixed results, with the former looking predictably much more realistic.
You see it? We saw something. How big is it? We lost track. Berg, pull up the speaker.
Are you all right?
Although the movie is often offensively stupid, the credits roll after just 77 minutes, preventing it from overstaying its welcome. The pittance of non-ironically enjoyable moments save the picture from being a total disappointment. For those looking for so bad it's good experiences, Lake Placid unfortunately qualifies. And now let's see what you had to say in the comments. Nobody really liked Lake Placid, but nobody really hated it either. The movie night audience thought it was alright, and I think it's just meh. And now let's review the sequel, Lake Placid 2. It's like the first, but worse. This direct-to-TV horror comedy was released on the Sci-Fi Channel in April of 2007, long after any interest in the lukewarm original had faded. Produced on a thin budget of just $2 million and with only a tenuous connection to the first film, we once again visit Black Lake, home to man-eating crocodiles that have returned to eat even more boneheaded humans. Leading the charge as the town sheriff is Dukes of Hazzard alum John Schneider, who does his best with the Z-list talent around him. Everyone is stuck recycling trite lines and playing dumb stereotypes. You even have the busty brunette who constantly complains about having to be outdoors. People go missing, no one takes the threat seriously, yada yada yada, you've seen this one already. Like literally, beat for beat, the 88-minute narrative is a carbon copy of the original. Someone is eaten by surprise in the cold open, a team of bickering morons are assembled to kill the croc, and some lewd old woman is seemingly behind the entire thing. Plus you've got boner jokes, Sam McMurray as a helicopter pilot, and charred pigs used as fish bait. Somehow the R-rated movie is even stupider than the last, with none of the ironic charm.
What is that? Whoa! Tillman?
Oh, it used to be.
Emma, you get out of there right now. Come on!
Now do you believe it's a giant crocodile?
Doesn't mean anything, Frank. It's just another piece of the puzzle.
Piece of the puzzle? We got his foot, we got his arm, and now we got his head. What other pieces do you need?
Mills, shut up.
Never mind the fact that the waterways of Bulgaria are a poor substitute for vacation land. The visual effects are just embarrassingly bad. Thankfully, director David Flores is smart enough to avoid revealing the scary beast too early. Plus, the film doesn't make any glaring technical mistakes and works as distracting background noise, so while Lake Placid 2 is dumb, derivative, and decidedly uninteresting, it isn't totally deserving of my lowest score. So I'll only say that it's a bad film. And now, a word from our sponsor. This episode of Movie Night is brought to you by Warby Parker, a hip online store that provides vintage-inspired prescription eyewear starting at just $95. So obviously, Four Eyes here has a vested interest. But what sets them apart is their free 5-day home try-on option. Visit warbyparkertrial.com/jogwheel, select any 5 frames, and they'll ship them to you sight unseen. These are contemporary glasses and sunglasses that are extremely affordable and available with prescription lenses. Plus, if you find a pair you like, your purchase will help support this modest little web show. Thanks as always for your support, but now let's get back to the crappy croc films with my review of Lake Placid 3. Well, I didn't hate it. Directed by Griff First, this $2.5 million direct-to-television sequel once again sees a group of man-eating crocodiles and their cutesy offspring terrifying a small Maine community. Colin Ferguson may be your poor man's Thomas Jane, who himself isn't exactly an A-list commodity, but he's the best performer in this group by a mile, and that includes the film's requisite big-name acquisition Michael Ironside, who plays what else, a gruff police sheriff. In the first of her 3 appearances in the series, Yancey Butler does her best bitchy Jillian Michaels impression, and the results are just grating and awful. Honestly though, the actors in these movies are just a means to a gory and entertaining end, so their performances are largely, thankfully, inconsequential. All the horror movie hallmarks are here, the skinny-dipping teens, gratuitous outfits, and even a car that won't start. But since this R-rated feature originally aired on basic cable, all of the otherwise redeemable moments of gore and nudity have been completely neutered down to a TV-14 presentation. But don't worry, we at least get to see a pointless hard rock montage when a dumb kid tries to steal some meat from a local market. And in true Lake Placid fashion, a great deal of the picture's so-called humor stems from people condescendingly dismissing professionals and the possibility of a deadly croc. Like, how terrible is this town's memory? The same lake has been terrorized by a giant monster on 3 separate occasions over 10 years, and people still don't take the threat seriously? You deserve to get eaten! As for the scenery, the low-budget production has once again returned to the nondescript wilderness of Eastern Europe, while much of the third act takes place on an almost completely undressed backlot. At 96 minutes, Lake Placid 3 is actually the longest in the 5-picture series, but was a weird little slowed-down flashback sequence really necessary leading up to the climax? Although the visuals are nowhere near as realistic as the original, there are a few cool shots accomplished, like Ironsides wedging an oar inside a croc's giant open mouth, and later when a car is pulled backwards into the lake. I feel like at some point during production the VFX guys realized they could merge CGI with people being dragged, which is why we see that same effect utilized no less than 5 times in the film.
God, Charlie, if you want to be a peeping Tom, I'll save you the trouble. What the? It's another one of those deer things! Ellie! Aaron!
If this picture was released last century, I dare say it'd be just as good, or as bad, as the 1999 film, but as a 2010 release, Lake Placid 3 is just an embarrassingly formulaic guilty pleasure. I thought it was lame. Next up, Lake Placid, the final chapter. More of the same. This 86-minute sci-fi original was released in September of 2012 and directed by Don Michael Paul. The TV-14 rated story once again features the citizens and officials in the fictional Black Lake dealing with a crocodile outbreak, which predictably results in lots of dumb teens being eaten alive. The optimistically titled fourth installment of the Lake Placid series is also the first to feature returning characters, specifically the perennial cranky pants Yancy Butler. Every line of dialogue she barks is a complaint or an insult. She even channels a bit of Die Hard's John McClane when she sarcastically mutters to herself, "Come on out to the lake, have a few laughs." Alongside her is your poor man's Kate Hudson, Elizabeth Rahm, Nightmare on Elm Street's Robert Englund, and a host of English 20-somethings who have various levels of convincing American accents. On the whole, everyone is serviceable without ever being offensive. And indeed, that's sort of been the MO for this entire franchise. It's disposable, below-average entertainment that's never egregiously awful, but hardly memorable either. I honestly began to forget developments from one picture as soon as I began watching the next.
Ryan! Come on! Hurry!
The best monster movie franchises expand on their premise, introducing more threats and new abilities or unique attractions along the way. This series, however, seems content with simply treading water. It's the same story and the same incidents over and over again. Like its predecessors, this made-for-TV cash grab ticks all of the horror comedy checkboxes. An over-reliance on CGI, a has-been actor as the eccentric villain, and pointless bickering between the moronic humans. Now, the problem with most low-budget monster movies, like the ones you'd see spoofed on MST3K, is that you don't get to see much of the monster and its victims. The camera cuts away, stock footage is used, or the lighting is just really dark. This technique, necessary for smaller productions, may not create an entertaining film, but it does help elevate tension and hide the film's shortcomings. Paradoxically, LP4 suffers from the opposite problem. It shows too much too often. There's no suspense when the characters are gobbled up only moments after being introduced. The best horror movies are a lot like sex. There's some foreplay, people get naked, and bodily fluids are spilled. This movie, however, is content with just having someone's dick get bitten off. But the audience is totally cool with it since its character's kind of a perv. The movie and its characters seem to intermittently adhere to safe boundaries. One minute the water is dangerous and everyone should retreat to the shore. Now, unfortunately, this isn't a new ability for the Crocs that, as I alluded to earlier, would have made the picture more interesting, just a completely unmotivated filming style. At this point, you know what to expect from the Lake Placid series, and since this is also the first picture in the franchise that functions as something of a direct sequel, you might as well check it out if you've come this far. The final chapter is an inoffensive TV monster experience. I thought it was lame. Speaking of the final chapter, here's my last review of the night for Anaconda vs. Lake Placid. So stupid it actually works. This made-for-television horror comedy was directed by A.B. Stone and premiered in April of 2015 on the Sci-Fi Channel. The horror comedy marks the fifth installment of two separate franchises that both honestly should have stopped after the first. In this outing, a confluence of ridiculous developments result in biologically enhanced anacondas being unleashed upon the Lake Placid community, itself already ravaged by a decade of crocodile attacks. This time around, Freddy Krueger has traded his claws for a hook, after his appendage-losing injury at the conclusion of the fourth film, which he apparently survived. Promoted to sheriff, Yancy Butler makes for a memorable protagonist, even if her acting range only goes from resting bitch face to I just smelled a fart. The sarcastic goth chick is easily the most convincing actor of the bunch, but her stereotypical character is still shallow and annoying. Meanwhile, the unrated version of the film drops any pretense as to why sorority girls are included at all. Make no mistake, despite being billed as a crossover, this really is just Lake Placid 5, borrowing that franchise's characters, story, and location. Besides a passing line of dialogue, there's literally no direct connection to Anaconda or any of its stupid sequels. With zero returning characters from the Snake movies, this is a crossover in name only. And while I understand the structure of the title, it's no less stupid. How exactly does a body of water fight an amphibious creature that's native to itself? That's like calling a film Bird vs. Sky or Dirt vs. Squirrel. It's just so monumentally boneheaded. Crococondas would have been a much more inspired choice. Much like its Lake Placid predecessors, this film is below average direct-to-video trash, but never unwatchably so. While the Anaconda movies got worse and worse, the Lake Placid series has somehow remained consistently passable, a trend this 92-minute sequel follows. Like when a fat, slobbish hunter is mauled by dozens of tiny crocs, I actually thought to myself, okay, that was kinda cool.
Wait, where's Jennifer? Ah! She's still inside. What? We have to get her out. Oh my god. Hey! Get off of there! Get off!
Generic Bayou-style country tunes and tracks straight off one of those ambient Halloween music CDs populate the score. We return to the nondescript wilderness of Eastern Europe, filmed with a washed-out TV aesthetic that doesn't do the film any favors. Given the modest budget, I can get past the crappy CGI effects, which admittedly have improved somewhat, but what I can't forgive is the hyper-unfocused editing, which never allows us to really appreciate any shot before it quickly cuts away. Ultimately, even the titular snake-on-croc action is a disappointment. The few fights between the creatures we do see are unevenly matched and end just as they're getting interesting. Lake Placid vs. Anaconda isn't as satisfying as it ought to be, but it's still better than it needs to be. I thought it was lame. I hope to finally get back on a consistent schedule on this channel this summer with some new episodes of Tech Check, Don't Eat the Spam, Jogwheel Originals, and Game Time Hangouts already in the works and filmed, alongside planned episodes of Movie Night, including the Planet of the Apes franchise, which we'll be discussing next time if you'd like to leave a comment review. In the meantime, you can click here to watch my review of the Anaconda series, you can click below that to watch my episode on shark movies, or click the Jogwheel icon below to subscribe and see new uploads when they're released. Once again, my name is Jonathan Pala, thanks for watching, and have a good movie night.